He's doing the baseball show right now with Harish.
What is up, guys? You are here for the final late slate sweat and swap show where we're going to discuss a little bit of the main slate. We're going to talk about the 2-game slate. We're also going to talk some about the showdown. We got something for everybody here on the late slate show. I'm Chris Spags, joined by a bevy of guests who may be appearing on the screen as I talk. But first of all, my usual co-pilot here on this late slate show, a man you saw just a few hours ago, sacrificing his own profitability in the name of news and NBA. He's Greg Ehrenberg. How you doing, Greg?
Yeah, so I've said this before. I'm good at multitasking, right? Like I don't want to toot my own horn, but I could multitask like none other. I've had no problems all year managing NBA news while I'm doing live before lock shows. Not the case over the last couple of weeks, where literally as we're doing the show, Josh and I are debating whether Robert Williams or Andre Drummond is the best FanDuel center play. Robert Williams just gets scratched 2 minutes before lock as we're talking about it. It was like our final talking point on the show. So yeah, it's become a thing where, I mean, I think it's pretty workable just in terms of I'm just going to pick each night whether I want to play on DraftKings or FanDuel where I'm doing live before lock, because it's so hard to play on both, even if I wasn't doing a show at this point, because when somebody's getting scratched like a key player like Robert Williams 2 minutes before lock, and that just seems like it's going to be something that happens like every slate for the next 7 weeks.
Yeah, going to be a lot of fun here. And another man who perhaps you'll see tilting and, I don't know, breaking into tears on shows based upon guys getting ruled out. You may be able to guess who it's going to be by the intro, but it's our other pal, Eric Lindquist, coming off a PGA show for one more here in the NBA. How's it going, Eric?
Just can't get enough. Got to write MLB this morning. Got to do tip off with you. Got to do PGA live before lock with Ben. Now I'm here for more. I can't get enough. We have an ace in the hole waiting. I don't even want to bring that up here. But also, I believe on the graphic, we've got Chris Spags is Eric Lindquist. We've got Chris Spags is Greg Ehrenberg. We've got you, that's Eric Lindquist. We have it all flipped around. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Oh, sorry. I'm getting some hate from Tyler on the other end.
Overwhelmed, giving the finger to Eric as he talks. Says
it's all right. I feel good about this.
Role-playing games for himself to pay attention to our production. But our final man, who is not on camera right now, you can't see him, but he brought his best look, kind of looking like a young Tiger Woods. Your pal Rin Pack. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be on the Farewell L3S show. Excited to tilt my Robert Williams exposure that I couldn't swap off of on FanDuel. I ended up with 5% of him. Was hoping for some Michael Carter Williams illness juju in him. Decided not to pull that off, but here we are, hoping for this Bulls starting lineup.
Yeah, that is going to be the big news that we need here with Zach LaVine, Kobe White out, and that is going to be an important one to hit on. But make sure you guys hit the like button. As we mentioned up top, this is the last late slate sweat and swap show as the MLB season takes away a lot of our on-camera guys and behind-the-scenes guys' time away. So enjoy it while it lasts. It's been a lot of fun doing the show with you guys. I'm sure I'll give one more semi-emotional address because it wouldn't be an Awesemo YouTube channel if I didn't say farewell to something on here once every 6 months. But we appreciate all of you guys who've tuned in and had a great time with us, and we're gonna have one more voyage here. But I'm gonna ask a question. I'm gonna go around here, and hopefully our old pal Emac will show up when he finishes recording his new MLB show with our pal Harish starting up here. His pal. I mean, everybody's a pal today, but check out that show, their version of the Slate Starter podcast for MLB, coming out on the YouTube channel soon. But I'm gonna ask you guys, because this slate, I think more than any might have necessitated it, or just via sorting process landed you on it. But I'll ask Eric first. Was there anybody, Eric, who you got 100% of in your lineups tonight?
Yeah, so far, Fred VanVleet and James Harden, I just locked in at shooting guard on FanDuel. I was doing the PGA show, so I played fewer lineups than I normally would. Just tried to be able to multitask. There was just so much news that kept popping up. And, you know, as you're trying to prep golf, and we've got the Valero this week, we've got the Masters next week, we have MLB starting tomorrow, which I have a bunch of tickets for. So I was trying to just go a little bit easy on myself. And the NBA surely didn't help us with some of the news. But Fred VanVleet worked out really well. James Harden is going to work out very well as he continues on here. But I'm still not even sure what I'm going to do. I think I randomly have some Ryan Arcidiacono exposure because I just kind of fell off the map this afternoon and had no idea what I was doing. So hopefully you guys can swap me into some goodies.
Greg, same question for you, because of whether it be a deliberate choice or you hosting a show and just having to pick your lineups fast. Was there anybody that you ended up completely 100% invested in today?
No, I also couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly what my exposures are to a lot of these guys. There was so much swapping that went on that I wasn't even entirely sure. I mean, I could go back and pull it up in Fantasy Cruncher. I think my highest owned players were Kenrich Williams, Svi, Kevin Porter Jr., Jordan Clarkson was in the mix, and then who were the other ones? Van Fleet and Siakam. But I don't think anybody ended up being 100%.
How about you, Ryan? People always curious about what you're playing on a given night, given some of the hot runs you've had recently, or really for about a year now, I feel like. But did you end up 100% on anybody? And hopefully it wasn't Robert Williams.
It was not Robert Williams. Highest exposed guy on both sites was Jordan Clarkson. It just seemed to make a lot of sense just to have him. I didn't even have him 100%. The closest I got to him was 90-something% over there on Yahoo, 80-something on FanDuel. But it's just because I had I was assuming that Levine and White were to be out, and that kind of made me go to some Satoransky. So that kind of limited Clarkson's ownership to get even higher on those sites. So we'll see what ends up happening.
I guess one more question for you, Ryan, because we've heard Eric talk about it a lot, and I do think a lot of what Eric talks about on the show, I think, comes from your guys' conversations, and or at least starts there, and then you guys kind of land on a consensus, and you both make some smart plays as a result. But Eric's talked a lot about his late slate strategy recently, where we've had so much injury news every single night that you kind of have to plan ahead for the potential for there being better value. Is there anything you're doing that's different or interesting, I guess, to the people out there watching? And even if it's not that different, I guess just tell people what you're doing to handle late swapping, because obviously you're doing it about as well as anybody out there.
So if you, for example, let's talk about on things on FanDuel right now. Jeremy Grant has up to 41.5 FanDuel points right now. And his ownership is pretty not as chalky as you would think. And there's not a true reason to really try to get extra contrarian with lineups with him. If you have lineups with him and Dame, those are looking really nice right now. Granted, there are a lot of games that are not in the fourth quarter like them, but you don't have to get extremely contrarian. If you have Giannis in there, you can still ride Giannis. You don't have to late swap much with him. Now, the real interesting point is this Drummond minutes limit or no minutes limit situation where they said they're going to be intelligent with his rotations. I believe that those were the words that were said. That price tag on FanDuel, I'm willing to try to get in as much as I can. I know there's only 2 games left. It's going to be tough to get as even more than what I have, but just trying to get in some more Drummond. I do feel confident that he could pay off that $5,200 price tag.
So we got some interesting moving parts here for the late slate. And again, make sure you guys hit that like button. And in 20 minutes, it'll be the final late slate money time. I'm sure bringing a tear to Josh Engelman's eye while he's asleep wherever he is right now, tucked deeply into his sheets with his Scrooge pajamas on. But make sure you hit that like button now. Get us to at least 100 here for the final show. We'd appreciate it a bunch. But let's talk, I guess, about what can go on in this late slate. And I think we need to talk let's tease out Chicago because we might get a starting lineup coming up in the next few minutes. Let's talk more about Andre Drummond because, as Ryan mentioned here, a play that throughout the day I think looked better on FanDuel than DraftKings. Probably the same case for the late slate, and for the showdown on DraftKings, I think he becomes a little more playable. But Greg, you talked about Drummond some today, but let's go back for just a late slate view on things. If Drummond was a play that you weren't the most confident in, I think you were okay with him on FanDuel, maybe less confident on DraftKings. Does he get better on FanDuel for the late slate? Does he get less appealing because he's now more of a necessity potentially? And on DraftKings as well, I guess, where are you going with him? Because maybe he's more in play for the late slate at a price point that for the main slate just didn't look that good.
Yeah, a whole lot of coach speak with Andre Drummond, where they said he's starting. He has no minutes restriction, but we're going to be careful with his minutes. We got to be careful. He hasn't played in a couple months. So it's a whole lot of conflicting things there. I still think that Andre Drummond, he's going to start. I assume he plays the bulk of the center minutes. I think Montrezl Harrell backs him up. I think there's going to be some overlap too with Andre Drummond and Montrezl Harrell minutes. I don't think Marc Gasol totally falls out of the rotation. I don't think he becomes, I don't think he's a significant piece anymore, but I still think we're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of, like 8 to 10 minutes from Marc Gasol. And then the question really becomes how many minutes do Montrezl Harrell and Andre Drummond overlap? It's hard for me to see Drummond play, like 34 minutes in his first game back, but I have him at 25 right now, and that still makes him a very strong play on FanDuel. It's hard for me to justify DraftKings playing him at 7,800, but the FanDuel price, he's pretty easily one of the better plays on the late slate. And I said earlier in the day that even before we knew that Andre Drummond didn't have a minutes restriction, I thought that he was the best center play on FanDuel.
Eric, how are you feeling about things where Andre Drummond, we've gotten a couple good takes here, and I think you can be a tiebreaker or at least join one of these guys here on feeling some degree of confidence on Andre Drummond, but how are you approaching him? And give me site-specific details here. Is he a different play for you on DraftKings and FanDuel for the night slate?
Yeah, I played a lot more on FanDuel, and I have nearly 100% Drummond over there. 5,200 is way, way, way too low. I felt coming into today, there were two plays that kind of had circled, Andre Drummond and Patrick Williams, and they're both here on the night slate. And so I just didn't really find a lot of ways to get off of them. I know that there was like Josh Hall or somebody that you could go down 100 to on the main slate or do whatever you wanted to. But 3,600, I thought that there was a good chance Kobe White and Zach LaVine were both going to be out. So I just locked in him at small forward. I basically like rotated around like 4 positions on FanDuel and kept like 4 or 5 of them the same. And that's kind of a product of my day too, just in terms of like the time that I was able to devote to swapping to things. I didn't have enough time to swap onto some of the OKC stuff. So basically, other than Roby, completely underexposed to that team. But Andre Drummond, 5,200, he could play 18 minutes and get on top of that price tag. So if you got to 25, 26, which I think is more than likely in the range of outcomes based on what we've heard, he could be an absolute smash as a guy. He's a 1.45 fantasy point per minute producer on the year. 5,200 was a joke of a price. I thought if they put him up in the mid 6K range, I'd probably be a little light on it. But I mean, I was shocked. We did the slate starter last night, and when Rinpack said Andre Drummond was 5,200 on FanDuel, we just kind of like had our jaws hit the floor a little bit. So I just kind of like followed that inkling and didn't really come off of it.
How many minutes, Eric, do you think that Drummond plays today? Because Awesemo has him in for 25, and I agree with you on FanDuel at 25 minutes. You know, that to me seems like it wouldn't be the hardest thing in the world to pay off, even if things get a little bit weird against Milwaukee. But if you have him for more than that, I'd be curious to know, because as these guys have mentioned, it's been a lot of coach speak about Drummond out there, and I feel like 25 minutes to me seems like a reasonable projection, but one on DraftKings where you definitely have to, sort of force your way there if you're to buy in at a player getting 25 minutes at 7,800.
So I think we need to change our thinking about that a little bit, because I think the range of outcomes for minutes with him was always higher than what people were saying. Like that for me is the big differentiator. This isn't a Chris Boucher situation where he could play 16 minutes or he could play 29 and you wouldn't be shocked on either end. They brought in Andre Drummond. He's had a month and a half off. I don't think he's a professional athlete. I don't think he's been sitting on the couch by any means. I would be very shocked if he was going to be in the starting lineup that they didn't feel comfortable pushing him out there, because they need to win games in order to stay in that top tier and that top echelon in the West. Not that home court is the most, like, the thing that matters here the most. Their health is the priority. Anthony Davis and LeBron James getting there. But in order to win games, a guy like Andre Drummond, like, historically, we don't think of him being a guy that's like a franchise changing player, but he's for sure fantasy viable. He can for sure get a bucket, and he for sure produces when he's out there. So I thought on the low end, 22 minutes was like the floor that I had for him plugged in. And then as soon as I saw he was going to get the start, that elevated to around the 26 range. And I think there's still upside for him to get to 28 or 30. In the past, a couple of years ago, we saw Montrezl Harrell play some 4 for the Clippers. I had a bunch of games where they had DeAndre Jordan on the court with him in a couple spots. So I don't think it's like foreign to maybe have both of them on the floor, but Marc Gasol is definitely the odd man out. And I just always felt much more secure about Andre Drummond's minutes and workload so long as this game stays close.
Greg, how many minutes do you have? Would you have Drummond in for? I know you do your own minutes rotations in addition to using some of Awesemo's as a reference point, but what's your minute projection?
Yeah, so I said before I gave him, I'll pull it back up real quick. I gave him, it was 25, and then I had 22 for Harrell, and then I gave 8 to Marc Gasol. Just that assumes now, obviously, that at some point, Andre Drummond's either sharing the court with Marc Gasol or Montrezl Harrell. I think he's probably more likely to share the court with Harrell, not because it's an ideal fit, but just because Harrell's been one of their better players, and it's hard for me to think they're just going to totally phase him out because Andre Drummond's here. Josh did bring up an interesting point before when we were doing Live Before Lock together. He thinks that Gasol is more likely to share the court with Drummond than Harrell, is just because the fit makes more sense. But I don't think that's the way the Lakers are going to go, because I think one of the main reasons they signed Drummond was just because they don't like how Marc Gasol's been playing. I think the fit with him and Harrell is terrible, but it doesn't matter what I think. I'm trying to predict what I think the team is going to do, not necessarily what I would do. So I think that Drummond and Harrell are going to overlap a little bit.
And Ryan, to close the loop here, how many minutes do you think Andre Drummond plays today? Let's treat it like a guessing game. If you want to price rate it and go a little bit lower to pick up the win, you can, but it seems like the going rate here is 25 minutes from Awesemo, 25 minutes from Greg. And then I think Eric has Andre Drummond playing every single minute today, 48 minutes for him in his debut.
Nah, he actually has 53. He's assuming overtime.
Yeah, no, I locked it in. They're going to run him into the ground day one, because why not?
I have him at 30 minutes, and the thing I was taking a look at was just because I was hoping that they would say something, and they did. And like what Greg said, a lot of coach speak. They're going to have to run him out there. They don't have to, but they would want to because they just signed him. And I think he's performed pretty well against this Milwaukee matchup with the Cleveland Cavaliers cast. Obviously, this Lakers cast is much better, even though like whoever's on the court is still like Dennis Schroeder and Kuzma are better than the likes of I want to say. He was on the court a lot of times with Okoro and Damian Dotson at times in those games against Milwaukee. But in those 30 minutes, there's a couple games he played 30 minutes. He's put up 41 and 39 fantasy points. And then there's a game he's put north of 50, which he played 41. So he's done well against Milwaukee this year. There was a time where Brook Lopez would make Andre Drummond hang out in the perimeter where he wouldn't get much rebounds. That era has kind of passed, in my opinion. So I think I feel pretty good about him getting 30 minutes now. How well does he perform in these 30 minutes? I still think he can find a way to a double-double. The guy was a double-double machine at a minimum, like in Cleveland. So, and now I think I'd be pretty thrilled if he can get somewhere to 35 fantasy points tonight. That'd be pretty awesome at that price tag.
By the way, here's the I just want to bring up, here was the official quote. Andre Drummond is going to play starters minutes, but we will be intelligent with his initial minutes since he hasn't played in 6 weeks, which, I mean, to me, if you're being intelligent with Andre Drummond's minutes, he wouldn't have signed him to begin with, and he played 0 minutes. So, yeah, our definitions of intelligent are all a little different here.
He also had a quote about playing Harrell alongside Gasol, which makes me think that Drummond is starting and I guess playing in the neighborhood of 25. I think 25 minutes seems safe. I do agree. If I had to give my guess here, I'm defaulting to the 25. As I've mentioned many times on the shows, I always use Awesemo's minutes projections because I think that saves me one little bit of sanity. And if I disagree on anything, I'll sometimes tweak it and then go, really, I'm tweaking the minutes projection from a guy who's made a million times more money than I've made in both DFS and real life. But I would say that for me, I think getting Drummond at 28 minutes seems about right. We got a question from our boy, the news god, as well in the YouTube chat, asking specifically if I can ask Eric if he's worried about Brook Lopez bringing Drummond away from the basket, seeing that Lopez thinks he's a shooting guard. So, Eric, I don't want you to disappoint news god here. Give him a good take or else we're booting you off the show.
I would never. Brook Lopez does kind of camp around the 3-point line. We see multiple times where, yeah, he'll pull Drummond out, but Drummond isn't like, I don't know. It's kind of a wash situation. It's not like it's some stretch for something that's coming up there. It is Drummond who's a true center coming out to guard him at the 3-point line. But I have no real concern about that. And even if he does, it's not going to be like they're going to just put Harrell out there and kill Drummond's confidence the first game out of the bat. You got to think that he's got a little bit of a longer leash. They brought him in to be a guy that can help him win basketball games. I don't think they're going to just quit on him day one. So even if Brook Lopez knocks down 4 or 5 threes, and they're not going to panic and throw Montrezl Harrell out there to be kind of that smaller center who can actually guard him at the 3-point line or whatever. Like, I'm not concerned about that whatsoever.
And it's not like bringing Harrell in is going to be a great defensive upgrade.
Mr. Fleet of Foot, Montrezl Harrell. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I agree for the most part there. I think Drummond, even if he does end up camping in a little bit more, probably just means more rebounds for him when Lopez inevitably misses some threes. We've got a super chat here from Derek Stansel, and I guess we could transition over to the Bulls. And guys, we're still 15 likes short of getting to 100. So hit that like button now because we are doing our last late slate money time for the last late slate sweat and swap show. Walked myself into a tongue twister there, but hit that like button here. We'll give you guys the top 5 owned plays for the main night slate, as well as the showdown. I said the main night slate, the night slate and the showdown night slate. I'll be hitting both of those. But Derek Stansel asking, can I play 4 Bulls on FanDuel? And I guess let's talk about it because the Bulls lineup not out yet, at least as far as I've seen from our news god or elsewhere. But it does seem like we're going to have a weird Bulls lineup. And Ryan, I'll ask you first because everybody just wants to know your takes, given that you're crushing every night. So why not lead with our best foot forward? How many Bulls is too many for you on FanDuel?
Yeah, I'm content playing 4 Bulls. It's a 2-game slate, especially on FanDuel, where there's 4 of the positions you have to roster 2 of them. Yeah, I'm content playing with having 4 Bulls. I'll have 4 Bulls in some lineups for sure. Starting lineup will help. I'm okay getting a little much cuter in 2-game slates, especially there on FanDuel. We're taking shots at guys like Denzel Valentine, Troy Brown Jr. Just some pivots off of Patrick Williams make a lot of sense. Paying up for Vooch at center is a nice way to get different from guys like Andre Drummond. If Drummond has a disappointing debut, Vooch is in a nice spot just with like the cast of characters that are there. He played Phoenix on March 24th before, and he put up 54 fantasy points. So, God, that's pretty impressive. I'll take 54 fantasy points at that price tag pretty happily. And centers on a 2-game slate, it's pretty important to get that position right in. And I think going to Vooch makes a ton of sense as a pivot off of Drummond now.
Greg, how are you feeling? Is 4 bulls an appropriate amount on you for FanDuel, given that you don't always need as many savings on FanDuel, and it does seem like getting to 4 bulls, maybe you are taking on a few guys who you're forcing into lineups in the hopes that they're going to be able to do more than they probably are actually going to do.
All right, a couple of things first. This is what I expect. This is what I expect the starting lineup to be for the Bulls. I think it's going to be Satoransky, Valentine, Patrick Williams, Thaddeus Young, and Nikola Vucevic. First, I'm going to put that out there. And for some of the cheap guys, I do prioritize whoever ends up starting over who comes off the bench. I'm also not positive. That's just my guess in terms of who's starting for them. But yeah, I mean, 4 Bulls, I have no issue with that. It's a 2-game slate, so there's only so many players to consider anyway. And the Bulls are such better value than any of the other teams that are available. Like, I don't think that this is a great spot to roster the Suns whenever Devin Booker and Chris Paul are both active. The Bucks guys make for good pay-up options. I have no clue what to expect from the Lakers outside of Andre Drummond is a really good individual play, but we don't know how he's going to impact guys like Montrezl Harrell, Kyle Kuzma, the other Lakers players. So, I mean, just by default, the Bulls guys to me look so much better than players from any other team.
Eric, how about you? How many bulls is too many? And do you share the sentiments here, which I'm going to think you do, but sharing the same sentiments that the Bulls players are going to look a lot better than anybody else you could possibly force in on the night slate?
You guys wanted to see me tilt James Harden's out for the rest of the game, so I was just trying to figure out what to do with my swaps.
I mean, not to pile on Eric too much, but he was kind of sucking before that. So
I don't care. Sure. It's just hurtful. Whatever.
See,
so just play a lot of bulls. I don't care anymore. Life is meaningless. What's the meaning of all of this? I'm not sure. Welcome to the late slate sweat and swap. Here we are.
Yeah, Tyler.
Tyler pays attention to be mean to Eric.
Fuck you, Tyler. Okay, here we go. So Bulls. I felt pretty good about having a lot of those 3K guys that we had talked about a little bit earlier.
Time out.
Go ahead. What happened?
Did you just see Spags' wine glass right there?
No, what happened?
It's my girlfriend's wine glass, and it's a bigger one. It's
a thermos.
What?
It's a gentleman's pour of wine.
Yeah, well, when you want to have a whole bottle next to you,
here's just a quick I want Eric's takes in a second, but I just want to point out for the last week or so, I've been drinking scotch on the show just because I had to get rid of a bottle of scotch. And my girlfriend's like, you have to drink this. I don't want this in the house anymore. So I've been drinking it every night. And I'll tell you what, when I drink a lemonade or like a Truly or whatever on the show, everybody's like, oh, look at Spags drinking a Truly. Nobody ever goes, hey, Spags, you're drinking a scotch. You're so fucking cool. Like, I know one time somebody think I'm awesome. Maybe that should have been the bit for the late slate show. Maybe it'd still be going if I were to smoking cigs and scotch and making a big deal out of it every show.
Spags, big seltzer guy. That's just what it is. It's refreshing and delicious. What can you say? Don't hate on it until you've had it. Those truly, the strawberry tea is so good. Letting it be known.
I haven't had the tea ones, but the lemonade one's great. I'm sure the tea one's good. I know they're doing lemonade and tea now. So check me out on a live before lock or a strategy show with Greg at 8 a.m. my time, pounding Trulies.
Just here we are. Yeah, too bad this is the last owner. We would have been doing a lot of this earlier, but yeah, I'm pretty sure just like this 3K value, it was Archie Diacono, Troy Brown, a lot of these guys that could possibly get slotted. And then Javonte Green is a random guy too, could end up getting slotted into that starting lineup. We don't really know. Troy Brown, again, has only played blowout run basically the last 2 other than like a 3-minute stint in the second quarter last time out. Obviously a new acquisition. There is room for him to possibly just get slotted in there, but yeah, it's a smattering of whomever, and we'll know that news here before 7.
I am frantically placing bets on the 76ers to win the Atlantic Division right now. So they are still plus 170, depending where you look. And then we also have Joel Embiid was just announced that he is coming back from injury on Saturday. So we now have the 76ers who are already pretty close with the Nets in the standings. Now potentially no Harden for a little bit and Joel Embiid coming back. So anybody who wants to get on that, there's probably a very limited window to jump on 76ers to win the division at really good odds.
Let's all give our predictions for the Bulls starting lineup. I think that's a good one that we can do here and tease it out because we are still waiting on this Bulls starting lineup. And I know, I think Greg already gave his, or somebody already gave theirs. Forgive me for forgetting already who did it, but I will say my pick here is going to be Satoransky. I do think Troy Brown sneaks in. I think that not Zach LaVine, Lowry Markkanen, Vucevic, and Patrick Williams would be my pick. Ryan, I'll go to you. Who do you think is the Bulls starting lineup today, given that we don't know it yet?
I feel confident with Vooch and Satoransky being in the starting lineup and Patrick Williams. Now, does The other two, it could go many ways. I do think there's a slim chance Markin can get back in the starting lineup after him not being in their last game, and then the two, it could be Troy Brown or Denzel. I think they traded for Troy Brown. I want to say Troy Brown gets there, but yeah, I'll take chances on Troy Brown and Lowry Markin, and it'll be a little different elsewhere.
And Eric, for the sake of completion here, who would be your Bulls starting lineup?
We're all here together. I got to give my take in as well. I have a weird feeling that it's going to be Javonte Green and Markkanen. Those will be the two slot in next to it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. There's a lot of ways it could go here, and a lot of ways that it could make the minutes projection that we have right now go south. But currently, Awesemo has Troy Brown getting 23 minutes, Javonte Green getting 25. Let's see, anybody else meaningful take? Patrick Williams, 31. So I think that would mean that he thinks that he's a starter. Vucevic, 31. Satoransky, 28. So honestly, could be a pretty deep rotation for the Bulls in a way that might not be the best for some of these guys, but we'll see what that starting lineup is when it comes through. Got about 2 minutes left till the halfway point of the show. So let's talk about Giannis real fast. We got a super chat, another one from Dennis, who we appreciate a bunch here, throwing out some money to get his, or excuse me, Derek, not Dennis. Boy, that's a completely different name. Derek asking question about Giannis. I didn't have it up in front of me. I went off memory, and I thought he felt like a Dennis thing.
Just make up his name. He just gave us free money. It's like, come on.
I like Derek's more than Dennis's, also, unless when you're the Always Sunny one. I feel like that's probably the top Dennis, but that's where I'm going with it. Giannis, can you fade him on the slate? Because I'm telling you, I'm not fading him for the main slate, and I do think for the night slate as well, I don't see how you wouldn't play Giannis. Same thing for the showdown. This spot, he's really the only guy out of that Milwaukee and Lakers game that I feel like, other than on FanDuel salary, I think it's a little bit different for Drummond, but on DraftKings, I think he's the only guy that projects decently well. So I would have Giannis in everything tonight. But Ryan, how are you feeling about that with Giannis? And would you be okay fading him at all in the night slate?
Tough to fade Giannis on the night slate, in my opinion. Just because I think there's a good chance he's one of the at least two highest scoring players in the night slate. At least you have to project him like that. Tough to fade him. I really like Giannis in this depleted Lakers team. There's serious upside of him getting 60+ fantasy points in this matchup. I have quite a bit of Giannis in the main slate. I will have quite a bit of him on the 2-game slate as well.
Eric, I'll ask you your take here. We got an ownership run here, but we'll get Eric's take in, and then we'll tease out Greg's, because Greg's is the one that everybody wants to really hear. So Eric, let's get in and we'll do some ownership projections.
A 2-game slate, it's so hard to fade Giannis in any situation, especially now that you do have this influx of value. We're going to get a starting lineup of guys that are going to project out decently well, whoever is in that starting lineup for the Bulls. I think that makes them kind of easy plug and plays. And on FanDuel too, where raw points just matter so much more, I like going that direction, just 100% and living with it.
All right, it's totally impossible to avoid Giannis, in my opinion. Because number one, if you look on FanDuel, we've all said that we do think that Andre Drummond is the best center play on FanDuel. So the really only two pay-up options we have that are legitimate pay-up options, it's Giannis and Vucevic. And if we're going to prioritize playing Drummond at center, well, I still think Vucevic is in play. I mean, there just isn't enough salary to spend if you're not plugging in Giannis in lineups that have Drummond. And then on DraftKings, we just look at, there's a whole bunch of cheap, viable options now on the Bulls. There's all the salary in the world to use, and it's really hard for a lot of that to not go to Giannis. So, I think it's a big mistake to not play Giannis on this 2-game slate.
Yeah, there's definitely enough value to go around. And, I think for Showdown too, you definitely want those raw points, the pretty 50. I think you probably could expect safely from Giannis, maybe potentially a lot more. So we'll talk about the Showdown here, but let's do some ownership projections because it is money time for the final time on the Late Slate show. So huzzah. let's do it and give away the top 5 owned plays for free on DraftKings and FanDuel, but you can always get them yourself with now no Late Slate show to rely on. Go to awesemo.com/join. All of our packages on there are pretty affordable. We also have the MLB deal going on right now. If you use the promo code starting9, you get 9 days of Awesemo plus MLB, all the data, player projections, ownership projections, the boom bust tool, which is new this year, the top stacks tool, lots of things, the lineup builder. So make sure you go to awesemo.com/join. Use that promo code starting9 on there. Top 5 for the night slate on DraftKings. Number 1 is Giannis, 68%. Number 2, Tomas Satoransky, 48%. Number 3, Dennis Schroeder at 44%. Number 4, Drew Holiday at 41%. And number 5, Kyle Kuzma at 39%. Let's go around here real fast and do this one. But out of this top 5, I'll start with Greg here, where we have Giannis, Satoransky, Schroeder, Holiday, Kuzma. Which one of those 5 would you want to come under the field on?
Boy, that's tough. I'm going to say Kuzma. And it's just because I think there's a good deal of uncertainty there with Andre Drummond in the mix. Like, we don't know, the Lakers play a lot of small ball lineups, and a lot of those include Kyle Kuzma playing power forward minutes. I think center minutes are off the table for him now, although we've seen that in the past. But now they have all these big men to play. Like, are they really going to run out a lineup where it's like, hey, we have Andre Drummond, Montrezl Harrell, and Kyle Kuzma all on the court at the same time? To me, I think that's a little bit problematic. So Kyle Kuzma, just because of the uncertainty in the minutes there, I would say him of those guys.
I presume Ryan is remarking on the Bulls lineup.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you want to just spew that one out? We went 0 for 4, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was no way you were going to get that one.
It's Thad Young back in the day, starting at the 3, Lowry at the 4, Vooch at the 5, and
Patrick Williams playing shooting guard, of course. Good Lord.
And Satoransky at the point. So big benefit to Lowry, in my opinion, just because he's cracking the starting lineup and could pick up some usage in this matchup. I like going to Lowry Marketing quite a bit. And now I just want to circle back on the Giannis sake. I do think if you want to fade Giannis, and I know there are ways that he can fail. Obviously, the Lakers could get blown up by 50, and he might not even get to 30 fantasy points. It makes more sense, I think, to do it on DraftKings than FanDuel, just because of how the roster construction is there. That'd be my final Giannis take. But would like to hear what you guys think of these Bulls starters now, and how can we prioritize the bench players? Which bench players stand out the most?
I think that's a pretty good question. And I would say that we will probably see a bench unit with still some minutes going to the aforementioned Troy Brown, Javonte Green, 2 guys that Eric and I both referenced, and Arcidiacono, who's been in play recently with Kobe White out. Greg, I'll ask you with this Bulls lineup, and we could go back to the ownership projection. Actually, let me give you the FanDuel ones real fast because I don't want to give FanDuel the short shrift, but we'll just touch on them and then we'll go back to the Bulls lineup. FanDuel's top 5, Giannis 91% on FanDuel. That's how FanDuel works, and honestly, probably should be 100. Devin Booker 64%, Chris Paul 57%, Dante DiVincenzo 52%, and Chris Middleton a slightly lower rounded up version of 52%. That's the top 5 on FanDuel. Bulls lineup though, Greg, out of your, now we have some guys in who are maybe not expected to be getting gigantic boosts in minutes, but Thaddeus Young, I think, would be another play that gains an appeal. Markkanen, who Rinpack just mentioned, but who gains the most for you with Chicago in this starting lineup that was, to say the least, unexpected?
Yeah, well, I mean, it has to be Lauri Markkanen just because he's a guy who we did not expect to start, who is now starting. It is a very wonky starting lineup. It's a game, like, if we're being honest, they were going to get their asses kicked by the Suns anyway. This lineup doesn't help anything. Like, they don't have very much shooting on the court. And an issue here is that in a game where you're playing as pretty significant underdogs against a really good team like the Suns, the way to stay competitive in a game where you're not expected to win is you add variance to the situation. The easiest way to add variance is you shoot a bunch of threes. The Bulls are not doing that with this starting lineup by just playing a bunch of giant men out there. So that's a concern. And if I was going to place a bet on this game now, it would have, I mean, ideally it would have been when Zach LaVine first got ruled out earlier, but it does lead me to like Suns -8 a little bit more. But outside of that, in terms of which bench guys do I like, given what I just said, if the Bulls are going to get behind in this game, I have to think that the way to get back in is they're going to have to prioritize shooting off the bench. So Denzel Valentine, Troy Brown Jr., these are not guys that are going to project particularly well now that they're coming off the bench, but these are also guys that I assume are not going to pick up very much ownership when we get the final version of the ownership projections here. So if you want to throw out, like 5 to 10% of lineups that have Denzel Valentine or Troy Brown just to differentiate, I think that's reasonable because I think the game script sets up to these guys have to come in off the bench and probably shoot at a pretty high clip.
Eric, how about you? How are you feeling about this Bulls starting lineup with the curveballs they threw at us?
I think if you can get on Lauri Markkanen, you get to as much as you possibly can in a limited sample, 36 minutes. But if you go back to last year, if you take LaVine and Kobe White off the floor, 36% usage, 37.5% usage this year. Obviously, you have Vooch, so that's the big unknown in the entire situation. But Lauri Markkanen has shown no propensity. I just ran a wowie on that, and that kind of just jumps off the page in terms of the usage. So I think that they are going to try to chuck threes. It's just not the guy that you necessarily would expect to have chuck threes, and Lauri Markkanen. So I do expect that kind of ends up being a deal. Again, it's a 36-minute sample in this year with LaVine and White off the floor, but 37.5% usage, still substantial in that kind of a situation. That's basically a one-game sample.
And to give, if we're going to buy into this volatility, embracing all of that, which I agree with for the most part, I think that's what real March Madness has taught us for decades now at this point. But we've seen more in the NBA. The one that jumps to mind for me this year, the Detroit game where they were so shorthanded against Toronto before Toronto was fully in the bad place that they're in now, just chucked up so many threes. And I think even today with the Thunder, they were also chucking up a bunch of threes early just to trying to keep up with Toronto in a game where they were overmatched. So I agree. I think that's something that more coaches seem to be adapting when there are star players out. And again, tying into what Eric was talking about earlier, Javonte Green actually kind of a good shooter. And I think in a way that a lot of the Bulls players off the bench, Valentine can shoot too. So I think Greg hoping or thinking that he might get into the rotation seems logical. But I do think Javonte Green, another one who jumps out as maybe having a little more ability to fill it up. But I think you guys are both on the something there. We're playing Valentine, playing Javonte Green. Maybe that's your way to get different for a night slate and hope you could spike an upside rather than playing, some of the other guys out there. They'll be a bit higher owned. Let's go through the showdown real fast because this is one that going back to the Milwaukee and the Lakers game, this is the showdown on DraftKings and FanDuel today. Giannis, the captain by a wide margin in the ownership projections. And Greg, I know you love a chalk captain. Giannis also going to be 99% owned, but I think on this slate, I'm probably with you more than usual. Is Giannis the captain you'd go to on DraftKings?
Yeah, it's so we do this a couple ways. Number one, the chalk captain, and whether I agree or disagree with it, it's Giannis, and I think that is rightfully so. And also, we've seen some of these other ones. We're looking at the captains for some of the late slates, and somebody like Giannis. We've seen other ones where they're projected for 50 or 60% ownership. So if you want to go with a chalk captain, Giannis, I definitely think is optimal if you're somebody who plays cash games in Showdown. Giannis is the way to go, but now I think if we start to look at who is a contrarian play for captain that has a considerable amount of upside, I would go with Andre Drummond at 12,900, only picking up 4% projected captain ownership. Like we've talked about, there's a whole wide range of outcomes with his playing time. I have no clue what to expect. This is his first game with a new team. He didn't play particularly well earlier in the season. That's why nobody wanted him. Right at the trade deadline, there was no takers for Andre Drummond. Last year when he got traded at the trade deadline, he went for a protected second-round pick and 2 expiring contract for players that are no longer in the NBA. So the value of Andre Drummond in the league is very low, but he's a very good fantasy producer. So he's one of these guys who there's such a big gap in between their actual NBA value and their fantasy value. So even though I think that Andre Drummond is overrated as an actual NBA player, I'm looking at all the uncertainty with his minutes, with him coming back and how good of a points per minute fantasy producer he is, with him only being 4% owned as a captain play. I think that is the most logical way to differentiate while still creating upside.
Eric, how are you feeling about captain in the showdown for DraftKings, where you do have Giannis going to be 99% owned across everything, 40% in captain, the rest of the top 5 as well, Schroeder, Kuzma, Middleton, Drew Holiday, all those guys over 54%. How do you feel about playing Giannis a captain, or would you like to do a strategy that I normally like to employ when there isn't a gigantic discrepancy between the top projected player and everybody else? But would you want to go to a lesser owned captain and get away from 40% of the field with Giannis, or would you rather play him and just suck it up and try to get different somewhere else?
See, I think I could get myself onto Drew Holiday in this spot as well. Been taking up a little bit more usage of late. Has spiked some massive games as well. 64.25, 47.5 in 2 of his past 4. I think having a couple shots on him as a lower owned captain to be able to jam some guys in, I don't mind so much. I love the Drummond call as another guy on captain. Again, Giannis is going to absorb so much of that captain ownership, and I generally like going there, but it's not like there's a ton of value down there below 4K. I mean, I think you're kind of forced into playing Caruso or Caldwell Pope. There's really nobody else down there that I want to be taking shots on. So to get a different lineup where I'm not overlapping with like 50 people, I think it's very, very difficult to do on this slate. I don't want to play Bryn Forbes down there at 3,300 if I'm making just a handful of lineups. If I'm making 150, sure. Diakite would be the only other guy that even like projects for me down below that range, who played 23 minutes against New York, but that was when they had 0 people on the floor. So I'm not trying to get cute in that direction either. So I think for me, I would be trying to get off of Giannis captain in this kind of a slate if I'm making like 10, 15 lineups, but he's definitely the go-to if I'm playing cash or something.
Ryan, how about you to close it out at 40% captain ownership for Giannis? Would he be the way you'd want to go because he just projects so much better than everybody? Or are you willing to take a stab just to get away from a good portion of the field?
Yeah, so in a game like this, when the spread's pretty high on Showdown, I like taking some chances across with some other players in the game. So I'll be pretty high on Middleton captain. I think there's definitely a chance Middleton can outscore Giannis. The game could blow out. It's because if Middleton gets hot from 3 and they put the game away. I like a pretty low-owned captain there. And on the other side of things, taking shots on Kuzma, I think I have some has some strong merit. Anytime a guy can potentially take 20 shot attempts as a captain option, it can definitely get you there. So, and not all the time. The game could stay competitive, and it's not all the time, especially in NBA. You need the highest scoring player, but more times than not, you do to be the captain, and just because there's usually enough value to fill it out. But if this game were to be somehow close and no one really pulls away, it could really change up the roster build pretty nicely.
And the FanDuel top 5 for their single game on there, they got Giannis at number 1 and will be 99.9% owned. Drew Holiday, number 2 at 55%. Number 3, Andre Drummond at 53%. Number 4, Chris Middleton at 49.7%. So you could say 50. And number 5, Kyle Kuzma at 46. So there's your ownership projections for this last late slate show that we have. People in the chat saying they think Lowry might go off. Isaiah Battles. Josh Gillum asking how many minutes for Drummond and Vooch, minutes wise, part of the Awesemo projections package you can get on the stat lines tab if you go on there. But you can see for those every single night, every single player, Awesemo's minutes projection. But Vooch 31 minutes today, Drummond projected for 25 by Awesemo. So actually, maybe that changed a little, but we did get the news Drummond officially starting. So I'm going to see if that changed Awesemo's minutes projection at all. I presume that he was going on that pathway, but I'll just double check to ensure accuracy here while it refreshes. And
by the way, while you're looking for that, we have a super chat here that super producer Jordan Klein is going to have a meltdown if we don't read off on the air here. So
he's not producing our show. Screw him.
Yeah. Well, hey, this is his hard-earned money. In his free time, he comes back, which by the way, Jordan complains he works too much. What does he do in his off time? He just goes and watches more shows. But right here, I think very important transition here. From Jordan Klein, he did give a super chat. He's a fan of Rinpack. What is your favorite Drake song?
Oh, favorite Drake song. There are so many good Drake songs that I mean, it's almost a decade worth of Drake music. But my favorite one is probably from the So Far Gone mixtape, the I'm Going In. His verse on that is absolutely insane with, I think, Jeezy and Lil Wayne are in that song as well. So that's my favorite Drake song.
All right, Jordan could sleep happy tonight now.
Gotta respect Ryan going with I would say not a deep cut, but a fairly deep cut there. You didn't go basic bitch on that one at all, Ryan.
Well, did you expect me to do the Hotline Blinks dance?
I was gonna make a joke like Hotline Bling, I bet. but no, nobody can pick Hotline Bling and be self-respecting.
I think the other four. I mean, all of us have to answer that question as well. I'm curious. I know Eric doesn't listen to Drake, but Greg, do you listen to Drake?
I mean, like not religiously. Like I have no clue what it is you just talked about, like before with the secret mixtape or whatever that he made, underground. But like I'm aware of who he is and whatnot. I'm more familiar with his work on Degrassi though.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chris, how about you?
It's honestly tough. Like I've always thought that Drake was a little bit overrated, but I feel like for me, the Hold On, We're Going Home is probably the one I like the most. I'm actually going through a listicle right now to see if there are any that I'm forgetting. Take Care, no, with Rihanna. That one's not making my cut. It's got to be Hold On, We're Going Home, I think, for me.
You already called me out. You know me too well. There's no way I knew a Drake song other than Hotline Bling from this thing.
Nah,
that's all I got.
Eric strikes me as more of a Taylor Swift guy.
Yeah, big time.
Just like our tip-off co-host Kayla loves Taylor Swift, and that's why she and Eric have become such fast friends, I would say.
There it is. There's the connection.
Oh, it's also our producer Tyler chiming in. I don't know if you guys heard that, but Tyler, get on mic and give us an impression real fast for the last Late Slate show.
What country?
Greg, make a request. You're good at improv. What country should Tyler do an impression from that won't get us canceled even harder?
You want me to do Scottish? All right. If I talk like I'm from Scotland, you really won't understand what I'm saying. It kind of sounds like I have a lot of peanut butter in my mouth.
All right.
It was like a Scottish pirate. It was just a flat out Scottish pirate. I didn't know there was such thing, but it's very vivid in my brain that was a Scottish pirate.
Wow. There must be some real interesting videos Tyler watches when he's not doing shows with us. Tyler
was just to let everybody in here on a joke that I don't know. I don't even know how to couch it on this show even.
I wouldn't bring it up.
I'm ready. Tyler mentioned that he was watching videos of a fella doing something, but was like very vague. And Greg and I then just proceeded to make very immature jokes about what this gentleman could be doing. But Tyler, a colorful character who watches many things of varying degrees of quality and sometimes ill repute, I guess.
Speaking of another person, Emac is now joining the stream.
Oh.
Apparently, we got one more special guest joining the show for our
EMAC
final late slate.
2024.
So
EMAC
EMAC
2024.
2024.
EMAC 2024. This is big
Let's
stuff.
go.
there we go. Yeah,
EMAC
to
2024.
kick off his presidential campaign, here's your old pal Emac, fresh off of another show he's recording. Mentioned earlier his version of the Slate starter for MLB with one of our new guys, Harish. How's it going, Emac? How is our old pal doing in this MLB crossover time?
It's good, doing well. I just learned that the whole game got canceled in NHL, so I had to fix that. I drew on the skills I learned from one Eric Lindquist, and all is good in the world.
Does EMAC know that you don't have to play every DFS slate for every single DFS sport?
I just had to do that. I was hand editing Vancouver and Calgary because it was just, I had so much Vancouver. It was a disaster. Calgary's so bad. You had to.
Yeah. Late swap, let it ride. We'll find
Good
out
job.
what happens in the morning.
Good job.
Emac's
my guy.
frenemy Seth too chimed in with his joke earlier, but now really caps locking it home. Worst dating game episode ever is what he's calling it. But I'm sure he's grateful to see you here on a night too where Fred VanVleet is living up to all the hype you've given him for the years, Emac.
Oh, that's right. That's he's having a good one. Yeah, I was focused on baseball. We did our first look podcast that will be up shortly, and we've got I think we have 4 or 5 hours of MLB content tomorrow, including another edition of the late slate swap and sweat, but it's not the swap and sweat part.
Yeah, I think that they're just going back to calling it live before lock for MLB, but there will be a regular show during the early times, which will be me and Greg doing our first MLB live before lock ever, I guess would be right. We didn't do one last year before. I don't think so.
I don't know. I can't remember. I can't remember anything I did past like 4 days ago.
It all blurs together. Emac, we haven't gotten any of your takes. How are you feeling about Chicago tonight? Because we have debated them ad nauseum. I feel like I'm just going to let Emac fill the last 10 minutes here. How are you feeling about Chicago? And then we'll talk about Andre Drummond a little.
Well, I'm making lineups now. I assumed none of those guys were going to play, so that's fine. And then there's this projection source I'll be using. It's a secret one, but Alex Baker turned me on to it, so I will be trusting in those. I think the key thing about this is not necessarily the best matchup for them, and now they've turned like literally everybody over. I don't know how much we can trust anybody, but no, I'm thinking baseball now. Vucevic and Satoransky are going to be totally fine, but anybody beyond that get a little tough to trust. Maybe a little Thaddeus Young, but outside of that, it's late slate, and you got to, if you're down to two games, your player pool is pretty thin already.
And then the other question that I'm going to have to ask you, Emac, is about Andre Drummond, because we debated him ad nauseum too. And I'm sure the people want to hear the takes about one of our most veteran and most appreciated voices in DFS. How are you feeling about Andre Drummond today? You're building your lineups now. What's your exposure to Andre Drummond for either the night slate or the showdown?
I was not going to try to get him into the main slate, but I'm fine with him on the night slate. I looked at some updates from the one and only News God. It looks like he'll be playing starters minutes. For what we understand, at least that in my mind means 24 seems like a baseline, and that feels a little bit better. The salary is, if I remember correctly, was like 6,900 or 7,300 on DK, somewhere around there. So you still need, a reasonable output from him, but I feel like he could walk into a double-double in a half of basketball if he's guaranteed that much. So.
Yep, I think that's reasonable. Let's talk about some low-owned guys, because this is something that honestly we probably should have done more of. And our pal Brad Levine also asking for my captain for Showdown. I'll just tell you, I played Giannis. I just don't think that you can make up the difference there at captain. I appreciate these guys going different at captain. Weirdly on the show, I'm always the one advocating for the non-superstar captains. And today, everybody besides me advocated for one. But I think in this spot, you got to play Giannis for Showdown captain. But let's talk low-owned plays for the late slate itself, because there are a couple guys under 10%, and I do think finding a guy under 10% can sometimes be just one way to spike a tournament upside without getting too weird. And we have Torrey Craig under 10%. We have Alex Caruso under 10% on DK's night slate. Ryan Arcidiacono, Taylor Horton-Tucker, Daniel Tice, Montrezl Harrell. Greg, out of those guys, we also have Langston Galloway, Thanasis, and Wesley Matthews. Do any of them stand out as being worth some exposure on a night slate to try to get different if you're putting in, I guess, as many lineups as you want before you get to a 10% or less?
I always feel it's hard when we go to the 10% number for Showdown, because there's rarely somebody who stands out at like under 10% that I really want to, back and be like, yeah, this guy's a really great play that everybody should be rostering. But well,
to be clear, I'm asking for the night slate, so it's a little bit easier, but still not good.
No, yeah, it's let's see, 10%.
Denzel Valentine at 11. I feel like that's
all right. Well, yeah. All right. I said I like Denzel Valentine before, but I feel like he didn't make the 10% mark because 11 is a bigger number than 10. But yeah, if you're letting me stretch to 11, then Denzel Valentine is my play because I said I liked him as a contrarian option before.
I know EMAC will appreciate this reference. This one goes to 11, right, EMAC? Huh?
Oh, absolutely. A little spinal tap there.
Eric, how about you? Under 10% on DK. Is there anybody, or up under 11% on DK? Is there anybody who you would want to cram into one lineup to try to get different?
Is there somebody you're trying to like guide me onto by saying 11%?
Just fill in the last 7 minutes of a show.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll talk very slowly for you then. Just savor these last moments of the.
If we each take 1 minute, Spags, we'll be done, right?
That's true.
Oh, okay. Well, my choice is going to be Alex Caruso. I think 4,300. If I'm going to play somebody, might as well be somebody who actually has like a minutes upside, can spike a random stocks upside. He's under 10% over on DK. Maybe Ryan Arcidiacono, who's really kind of surprisingly still at around 8%, who I think could get filled in for 20 minutes. So maybe one of those two, one guy from each game.
Ryan, how about you? A guy under 10% for the night slate. And I'm going to say real fast too, for Eric, I got Alex Caruso as my under 10% guy for the Showdown or somewhere therein. So I'm on some page with you, but Ryan, for the night slate, who would you pick under 10% to maybe get different somewhere?
I guess Eric took my Ryan Arcidiacono. I think Talon Horton Tucker just has the upside in him. We've seen it in the past. 5,600, sub 10% when a guy can put up 40 fantasy points, just in terms of game script could work in his favor. I like going to him really on kind of both sites, really. I have no issues with him on either site. So Talon Horton Tucker for me on DraftKings would be the sub 10% play.
EMAC, how about you? Do you have a low-owned flyer that you'd be willing to give to the people here as one last gift from their old pal in the late slate sweat and swap show?
Well, it would have been Alex Caruso. And if you didn't see Alex Baker's side-by-side photo on Twitter today with next to Alex Caruso, you're just not doing life correctly. Not under 10% owned, but did you guys do much to discuss Dante DiVincenzo, who's had some ugly-looking game logs, but still has the ability to drop his shot or splash his shots? I don't know that he had 3 games of at least 13 rebounds 4, 5, and 8 games ago. That's an outlier, but we do know he has a good chance at getting double-digit scoring. So I don't dislike him. Does he fall into the potential mop-up duty category? I
feel like he does. I think I'll allow it, EMAC. I think that was a perfectly valid take to provide, and I will completely let that be your final words here on the low ownership on the Late Slate Show. We got some questions in the chat. I guess people just really ripping on Eric's background and the fact that, fun fact about Eric, he got scolded by his fiance the other day for talking too loudly, having too much fun in our pre-show in the tip-off, and she came in and was like, "What the fuck?"
I was so rowdy. Well, she's on calls too. We're both on Zoom at the same time. Sometimes it gets spotty and he'll just be like, "Honey, turn the thing off." And she'll scream at me. It's
Eric was having too much fun, I think.
Does he just immediately start crying?
Honestly, fuck all of you. I'm so over this crap.
At La Quinta Inn, right? You got a suite, don't you?
I do. Yeah. No, it was nice. Well, that was just me out hanging with my parents who I hadn't seen forever. So not as cool. She was in San Luis Obispo for a birthday party. And so we kind of went our own separate ways. That's about the only time we spent apart in this entire pandemic. So, I
thought you were in there right now, just looking at your background.
This is my home. This is my home. Oh, yeah. Honestly, you're being
That's for everybody in YouTube chat. I brought it to him directly for you guys.
Isn't that your thing?
Got him!
There it is.
On the way out. Also, look at the YouTube display that Tyler gave us. I feel like it really makes Eric and I look like the stars here, which I appreciate. Though Ryan's a center square, and I think that kind of gives him some appeal.
We need it. It's that LA vanity thing.
That's true.
It's like we're playing Hollywood Squares.
I wish we had a version of that on this channel somewhere. I would love to host a shitty version of Hollywood Squares where we do DFS content around. Maybe that's one of the pitches we'll make for all the time we're going to be opening up during MLB. Who knows? All right, let's see. Any final questions in the premium Slack? Let me jump back here to make sure we're covering everybody's needs. Middleton, Kuzma, or Paul on DK is a question from Archuleta 22. For me, I think that's Middleton, but we really didn't talk Phoenix at all. And I guess we could talk about that on the way out, but go in a circle here, everybody. Greg, you first. Middleton, Kuzma, or Paul on DK?
Middleton, Kuzma, Paul. I have Middleton projected the highest of those guys.
Ryan, Middleton, Kuzma, or Paul?
I'll take Middleton. I think all things put together, matchup, upside, and ownership. I think Middleton comes out a strong play.
Eric, how about you?
Middleton, I think probably on DraftKings, FanDuel, Chris Paul 7,400. I'd probably slightly lean there if it was an either or.
And EMAC, close us out with this. Well, not close out, but closes out this question with Middleton, Kuzma, or Paul on DK.
Chris Paul is my highest owned amongst those guys on DK, 45% in the night slate.
People asking about the Yahoo late slate. Kudos to people playing on Yahoo. I know, Ryan, you play on there some, but if you have any overarching thoughts, feel free to give it to them.
Yeah, I think you can jam in both Drummond and Vooch and feel pretty confident. Find a way, use the Bulls value to get up to Giannis. And I think that you'll be in a good situation, in my opinion.
I respect people playing on Yahoo right now, but another Fargo guy, I actually got two people playing on Yahoo asking questions. Connaughton, Patrick Williams, and Crowder all about the same price on Yahoo. Which two would you play? I feel like Williams has to be one of them, but Ryan, Connaughton, Williams, Crowder, which two would you play?
Probably Williams, just because I think he's probably the safest guy who gets to 30 plus minutes, in my opinion.
And by the way, I like we ran the gamut of this show, right? We've done it for most of the season to this point, and not until there's 2 minutes left in the life expectancy of the show does somebody bring up just an entire new slate, a new site that everybody plays on all of a sudden. Yahoo hasn't come up once in the months we've been here. Now all of a sudden everybody's asking about, like, if we had some gimmick, like, hey, we talk about Yahoo late slate, maybe the show would have lasted a little longer.
That's true. We just touched on every single site possible for the last hour that everybody could be playing on, as they are so mad at their main slate lineups and need to get something in. Perhaps we could have gone a little longer, but we are about to be locked. So first of all, I appreciate you guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hitting the notification bell. Make sure you're using that starting 9 promo at awesemo.com/join to get 9 days for $9 of Awesemo plus MLB data. And that is everything you need to win some money playing MLB. But all these guys have been a part of the show, so I have to say thank you to them, first of all. And it's been a lot of fun doing the show, getting to do something different, creating some new content and inventory on the channel. To me is something that I enjoy personally. So thank you to all of you for joining along on this ride. Thank you to these analysts for helping make the show easier on me. But I'll throw it to each one of you. Give us a parting word. Eric, start with you.
Guys, MLB starting up tomorrow. Promo code starting 9. If you're not a part of Awesemo Premium, we've got so much good stuff behind the paywall right now. But otherwise, it has been lovely to be working with you, Spags, all of you guys. Let's keep it rolling.
Greg, final words.
Yeah, I mean, EMAC 2024, he's more life experience than all the rest of us here combined. He's a man. He's really experienced it all. He's been in that of love. He's probably been divorced about a dozen times. He's done favors for homeless guys under bridges to pay rent. There's nothing in life that EMAC has not done before, and this is why that he should be your write-in presidential candidate in 2024.
Remind me to never have Greg ever give the toast at a wedding. Just never.
Ryan, give us the parting words. We'll leave EMAC for the best for last.
That's going to be so tough to beat. No, thanks so much. It was a ton of fun. Just I know it was the farewell show, but hopefully we can do something like this baseball sporadically, and maybe the NBA playoffs for some big showdown slates. We'll make a reappearance. But no, this was a ton of fun.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. After you're done, Ryan.
Check out
Ryan,
the MLB starting.
Now I feel bad.
Cut me off like it's the Oscars.
EMAC, final words.
Well, thank everybody here on the channel for joining us, both in the audience as well as the different hosts here. It's always fun to have different combinations of us. It brings different energy, different perspective, and it's a whole lot of fun. So thank you all for that. And thank you for Chris for doing the heavy lifting and keeping us all on track.
Yeah, thanks to all you guys for watching. Thanks to all of our hosts. Thank you to Tyler, our producer here. Of course, Jordan also has produced, I think, a few of these, but Tyler's been the one here for us every day, bringing joy and whatever weird internet browsing habits that he has over the course of the time period. But we appreciate you guys. Ton of Awesemo content coming up for the NBA and MLB tomorrow. So subscribe to that notification bell. We'll see you guys again soon. Thanks for watching the Late Slate Show, and good luck.
EMAC 2024.
I support this message.